guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're getting back into Egghead, and this arc is currently messing with my mind so much because it is so dense. Like, Oda has packed this arc with so much that I'm only able to take it like 10 chapters at a time or so far because there's just so much going on. I read from chapter 1066 to 1074 is the bunch of chapters that I just read because there's so much going on. There's so much happening, and it hurts my brain. And I'm just gonna say, I was so wrong. I was so wrong. Listen, guys, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I think this is the most I have been wrong about one of my theories, one of my predictions for this story ever. And it's the location of where Vivi was. Because y'all sat there and watched me theorize how I was 100% sure that Emu had Vivi. I was so sure that Emu had Vivi. I was so confident in it. And y'all sat there and laughed at me for being wrong for so long. Ever since the reverie, or the after effects of the reverie, I have been wrong, and y'all let me be wrong. And it's so funny because I have never been so wrong on a prediction in One Piece in my life, but I've also never been so happy to have been so just absolutely unequivocally wrong about something, because I would have never guessed that it wasn't Emu that had Vivi. No, not Emu, Big Bird. Big Bird has Vivi. He is hiding Vivi. Morgan's has Vivi. When I tell y'all, at the end of chapter 1074, I sat there and stared at the last page with a picture of Vivi on it with Wapple beside her in Morgan's care. I sat there and stared at that page for a good 4 minutes because my brain was just trying to process what I was seeing and process the concept of me being so wrong about where Vivi was. And afterwards, I just set the phone down and I was like, that's enough reading for today. I'm done. Vivi's with Big Bird. Vivi is sitting, chilling with Big Bird. Not a care in the world. Well, actually, there's a lot of cares in the world. There's still a lot of things we gotta figure it out. But yes, Big Bird is hiding Vivi. And she is not for his narrative of Luffy going against, or holding Vegapunk hostage or anything like he's trying to push at the time for a good story. That was a twist and a half for me because I was so dead set on, oh, Emu's got Vivi, we're gonna go after Emu to get Vivi back, that's how we're gonna get. It's quite comical how wrong I was. And y'all are great because y'all did not once correct me. Nobody spoiled it for me, which is hilarious, and I absolutely love that. I love it so much that y'all let me just sit here, and it's great because I can just imagine y'all just sitting there laughing at me being like, no, she's so wrong about this, she's so off, so confident and so wrong. Y'all probably enjoyed that quite a bit. I know I did after I figured out how wrong I was. That was definitely the biggest shock of this bunch of chapters, just because for me personally it was the biggest shock because I was so far away from expecting that it kind of hit me like a brick. But this bunch of chapters was amazing. There was so much information. We got a tidbit of Kuma's backstory, like a small little smidgen when Vivi enters the little pawpaw that has his emotions, like his memories. If that little glimpse is telling of what Kuma's story is going to hold, I am not ready for it. And I realized I wasn't ready for it when Bonnie came out of the pawpaw, and I was like, I'm I'm not prepared. Like Bonnie was saying that she had to prepare herself in order to view this. I have to prepare myself in order to view this backstory. I'm not ready. But I don't know when we're gonna get it because we have a lot of other things going on. So let's talk about it. This review is gonna be a little chaotic because I just finished these chapters recently and I have a lot of thoughts. It's a little scattered, it's a little all over the place. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about it because there was some really cool fights, huge bomb drops, surprise twists, people that are alive that I didn't expect to be alive, and just Oda's cooking. Oda's been cooking for a while and he just doesn't stop. So let's start from the beginning, talking about chapter 1066 and the will of Ohara. First of all, the fact that Vegapunk visited Ohara after the incident, all those books that we saw from Ohara that they tossed into the lake to keep them preserved, they were still there. And the giants were, oh my gosh, we're getting Elbaf. Kid is Kid's going to Elbaf. I know I just skipped everything, but Kid's at Elbaf? So how close is it? Okay, like we were all at Wano, and it hasn't been that long of a time since we split off from Kid, Law, like our group hasn't split off from them. He found Elbaf fast. And we found Egghead. They found Elbaf. So how close are they together? Usopp, oh my goodness, if Usopp finds out Elbaf is nearby or, you know, the giants involved with it. I mean, he was already really excited and like intently listening when Vegapunk was telling them about Elbaf being, or the giants from Elbaf being there to help with the book recovery. If Elbaf is really close by, that's really exciting and could potentially lead to a really interesting arc. Also could potentially lead to a very devastating arc because I have a thought about Usopp and Elbaf, and might as well just throw it out here before anything else. I have a fear that since it was the giants who really inspired Usopp, like yes, Luffy inspired Usopp to follow his dream and he took him along, but when they got to Little Garden, it was the giants who really took that dream of Usopp's up a notch and really inspired him to be a brave warrior of the sea. If they went to Elbaf and something happened there and Usopp got to show himself to be a brave warrior of the sea, concluding his dream, concluding his journey, would that be the first exit of one of our Straw Hats? I worry about that. I worry about how that could play out because it can play out many different ways, but I worry about how that situation would play out. That's completely besides the point and not anywhere relevant to this review, but I just wanted to say it before I go any further. But yes, the giants were on Ohara, sent there by Saul. Saul is alive. And you know what? It actually makes sense because Aokiji and Saul were really good friends. Aokiji just froze Saul. That's all we saw. And we've seen people come unfrozen from Aokiji's ice before. I mean, the Straw Hats did it when they were back in Long Ring Longland when they were first introduced to Aokiji, and they were all frozen and they were able to be thawed out. It makes sense that Saul would be able to be thawed out, especially with, you know, the burning flames of Ohara being everywhere. It kind of makes sense that he would survive that, and it would make sense that he would carry on that will both for Robin and for all the people that he knew and loved on Ohara, especially Robin's mom. When Robin is talking to Vegapunk, or I think it's Shaka, when Robin is talking to Shaka about all this, I mean, he fills her in on, like, the Void Sentry about what they were studying, tells the rest of the Straw Hats about it, so now they're all in on it. They all can be hunted down for the information. He tells them about the Void Sentry, the 20 kingdoms that later developed into the world government, the one kingdom that it had fought against and destroyed. And, I mean, Shaka pretty much confirms what we knew already, that if the government took action like this, doesn't it confirm that it's true? Yes. Yes, it does. And Robin gets to learn more about Dr. Clover because Vegapunk knew Dr. Clover back in the day. They were friends, they were colleagues, and she gets to know more about Dr. Clover's history, about the life he led before she knew him. Tells her about all the books that have been preserved due to all of the scholars' wills and their perseverance to get those books out before they burned. And as she's hearing all this, she's thinking of Dr. Clover, and she's thinking of her mom when she says, "We cannot give up the future of the world." And to see Robin sitting there crying as she's thinking about this, like, her crying because everything that she had suffered, everything that she thought she had lost forever, there is still a portion of her mother's will, that professor's will, Saul's will, that still lives on. She hasn't lost everything. They lived through that will, through what they preserved. And that hitting her so hard as she's being told about it and she's crying. I will always, forever have a soft spot for Robin, and this moment just hit differently. Seeing her cry, because we don't often get to see her express this side of herself with these emotions. We haven't really seen her cry a lot. Besides, I think the last time we've really seen Robin truly cry like this is in Eni's lobby. But as Vegapunk is talking about his time being on Ohara, he just happens to mention that Dragon was there as well. Dragon knew Clover, Professor Clover, as well, and it was this incident that inspired Dragon to take his, what were they called? His freedom fighters, this group of freedom fighters that he had, and this event inspired him to turn that group of freedom fighters into the Revolutionary Army. He founded the Revolutionary Army because of what happened on Ohara. So much connects together in this world that I shouldn't be surprised by it, but it always just baffles me how interconnected and woven the storyline and the threads that Oda has made. It just always blows my mind how masterful he has tied all of these together. And that is when Shaka is able to tell Robin that yes, it was Saul, and to see her cry but have a happy smile on her face. You know what? I am happy for Robin. I'm so happy for Robin, for her to hear about this, and I'm happy that Saul is alive, because we're gonna meet him again at some point. There's gonna be a reunion with Robin and Saul, and I'm not gonna be prepared for it, and I'm gonna cry my eyes out. It's gonna be fine. This arc is so good. But while that whole conversation is happening and Shaka is taking them elsewhere, we get Vegapunk, the real Vegapunk, showing up in front of Bonnie and Luffy and all of them. And as soon as Luffy saves him, Bonnie wants to try to kill him because of everything he's done to Kuma. Vegapunk does not want to fight Bonnie. There seems to, like, he seems very protective over Bonnie, like he cares a lot about her. Like the way he acts towards her makes it seem like this isn't just like the first or second time they've met. He knows her very well. I don't know if it's because of his bond with Kuma or if it's something else. I don't know what else, unless Bonnie just doesn't remember things and Vegapunk does, and because he remembers something she doesn't, he cares a lot more about her. I mean, he doesn't want to fight her, but he's made a promise to Kuma not to say what has happened, not to tell of what agreement was made, only that he agreed to it of his own free will. Because he agreed to it of his own free will, there's something or someone that made him choose that. And I'm thinking it's Bonnie because that is his daughter. We don't know their full relationship at the time, or like the timeline and how close they were. I mean, they seem like they were really close given the way Bonnie is acting. And even as much as Bonnie is trying to attack Vegapunk, even though she gets attacked by bugs and passes out and then later gets up and wants to try to get him again, he does not want to attack her. Even when she reverts to a child form and she's crying, he's so attentive to her and he's running. He's like, oh my gosh, Bonnie, are you okay? I mean, of course she tricks him and he falls for it, but it's like, he cares a lot about Bonnie. And actually, this is a side note, but I was right. I was right that Vegapunk wanted Luffy for a reason. That he was going to side with Luffy for a reason. Because when... I'm skipping so much. I'm all over the place. But when Luffy was fighting against Lucci, and he was in Gear 5, Vegapunk was so interested. He was like, where's the warrior in white? Like, he was so intrigued and talking about Nika and, like, the devil fruits, how devil fruits come about, which that lore is fascinating. I know I just made a theory video about Joy Boy. Honestly, that knowledge doesn't change too much about my theory. It changes a little bit, but it doesn't change too much. Just a little fixing here and there, and it's fine. But yeah, so I was right about Vegapunk wanting Luffy for a very specific reason, and he's entrusting Luffy to get him off the island safely, which makes me, I'm curious to see, like, when we get off the island, how long is Vegapunk gonna stay with us? Is he gonna become part of Luffy's Grand Fleet? Because I mean, he's already an ally of sorts, but like, talk about an ally. Talk about an ally to have with Vegapunk. And Vegapunk explains the entirety of Punk Records and how he uses it to pretty much give his brain room, because he has a brain fruit, and as much knowledge as he has, his brain continues to grow, and that's why his brain's so massive, which is really cool. I do like Vegapunk's design. It looks really neat. But yeah, he explains everything about Punk Records and how he has his 6 divisions of Vegapunks with the ones he made to kind of keep the knowledge and how they link up or sync up every day. He talks about his scientific failures, and he finally mentions Momo's fruit, which is so funny because the only reason Momo's devil fruit is considered a failure is because he's a pink dragon. That is the only reason he's considered a failure. It's because he's pink. So his attempt to grow a man-made fruit was successful, but it's a failure in his eyes because it wasn't the color he wanted. I like Vegapunk. I think he's a great character. He is so fun and fascinating, and he's been a hoot to have so far. I really enjoy his character. But we also get to figure out that this Iron Giant guy that Luffy and them had happened to cross the last time was something that had attacked Mary Joy 100 to 200 years ago. What was it? Around 200 years ago. But it was actually built 900 years ago. It says its goal was never understood. They say that there was no damage only because it ran out of energy. And Vegapunk, of course, wants to know the source of energy so that he can utilize it and figure it out, and so, you know, the world can kind of be sustained on this sort of energy. But if we get that energy, what if the Ark back in Fishman Island, what if the Ark was originally powered by whatever energy was from 900 years ago, and that's how Joy Boy back then was able to lead the ancient weapons, like Shirahoshi called them, like Neptunians, and they were able to lead that Ark with the help of this energy, and they were... What if the ancient weapons that aren't human, what if they need something to do with this energy source? Because if the ancient weapons are connected to whatever the kingdom was 900 years ago, and it has the same technology, maybe that's why nobody's been able to replicate them to this day, because they don't have that technology as of yet. They don't have the energy source as of yet. But if they got their hands on it, But before Vegapunk asks Luffy to take him off of Egghead, he does say there's something he needs to give Bonnie. I think it has something to do with Kuma's memories, but I think it might be something else to do with maybe her past or Kuma's past. There's something he has to give her, but then the reason he says, hey, I need you to take me off of Egghead, because he knows if he stays on Egghead, he won't be able to have that chance, and he won't be able to maybe pass on something of Kuma, like Kuma's will or something like that. I don't know. Lucci and CP0 are coming up to Egghead wanting to get in, but they're just being told to drop Seraphim, Kuma off and leave. Lucci doesn't like that because he's like, well, I don't see Straw Hat, or I know it's later, but he's like, I don't see Straw Hat as an emperor. I'm gonna fight him whether we have permission or not. See how well that went for you, Lucci. Well, that's all happening, and CP0 is infiltrating Egghead, and they're all having to make all these preparations. Kuma gets up and starts moving. He leaves the Revolutionary Army like on instinct, like something tells him that he's gotta move. I don't know what spurred it on in Kuma, but he suddenly got up and he took himself to Mary Joy and started climbing up the red line and wouldn't stop. And I have to know. I'm not wanting to know because I know it's about to destroy me, but I have to know Kuma's story, because at this point it's like, what is driving him? Because they keep saying, oh, there should be nothing left in him. There should be there should be none of his own will, none of his own sense of identity left in him, and yet he's still moving. He's still moving forward. He keeps going. Why? What drives him? What part of him is left? And what is his motivation to keep him moving? What is he moving for? What does he want at the red line? I don't know. Kuma's hurting me a lot. Like, he's hurting me a lot in these recent chapters because of how much it's building towards, and I'm not quite prepared to see why. But at the same time, I absolutely need to know because it's driving me crazy. The Vegapunks stabilize different Seraphim, I think, Boas, Mihawks, and Jinbeis to go out and fight. While trying to call the rest of the Vegapunks back, one of them gets injured, but they still take her back to get her parts fixed, pretty much because I think her head got messed up by Lucci. They're ready to fight against CP0, against Lucci. And I love it that the reason Luffy decides to fight is because the Vegapunk that Lucci had injured was the one that fed them. And he's like, she made sure I had plenty to eat and you hurt her. It's time to fight. I still love that about Luffy. I love it so much. And yeah, he's totally ready to scrap because he hurt somebody that fed him. We have Kizaru on his way to Egghead. We have Lucci and Kaku's awakened Zoan forms, which look really cool. Luffy's obviously looks better, but I mean, they do look really cool, and they say they have these big power-ups. I am just gonna say it. Luffy versus Lucci, the rematch, was not much of a fight. Luffy was in total control of the fight the entire time. Literally the entire time. And again, in Gear 5, he's just sitting there, he's laughing, fighting however he wants. It's like he's different. It's like he's different, but he's Luffy at the same time. That thing is that theme is continuing. And that's, as they're watching the fight, that's when Vegapunk is explaining, like, there's no such thing as a gum-gum fruit. That is a Zoan fruit, the model Nika. He says that, indeed, the foolish and laughable warrior of liberation who brings smiles to all people. Because nobody has heard of Nika because, like he says, it's a name that's been erased from the historical record. I wonder why. But Vegapunk gives us the kind of a breakdown on his theory about devil fruits and how they come into existence as Luffy is fighting against Lucci, saying that these powers exist in different dimensions dreamed up by someone else before them. And we have Sentomaru, who's on Egghead with Vegapunk because Vegapunk has taken him in, and he's going up against Cypher Pole and making himself a traitor of sorts. He ends up getting critically injured, pretty much losing control of the Seraphim, giving their control to Lucci because of the tier of how their control works and who gets what control over them. Sentomaru is awesome because of how much of a fight he puts up, how he still kind of keeps up his guard and fights to the very, very end. And so as they're fighting and Sentomaru's putting up a fight, he's getting critically injured. Luffy is fighting against Lucci. Vegapunk drops this information that only Zoan fruits can be artificially made, which it makes sense because that's the ones we've seen thus far. But only Zoan fruits can be artificially made. Could someone possibly make another Nika fruit? Can you imagine if there was 2 of them? The chaos, the absolute chaos that would cause. I would be so down for it though. But the reason he's able to make the Seraphim is because of the green blood with the user's DNA in them. As long as they have the user's bloodline element, you can synthesize and administer a special kind of blood to confer those powers. And that's what the Seraphim have in them to make them work the way they do. And I will just say, there's so many different panels during this fight that Luffy has against Lucci that I absolutely love because I adore Gear 5. I adore Nika's form when Luffy's fighting and how creative he gets with it. And this panel, I'm just going to put a couple of my favorites right here. This panel right here, when he has a giant mouth like Pac-Man and he's going for Lucci to just chomp him, is so funny. It's so funny. And then putting the glasses on before shooting himself like a rocket. And like he pretty much just beats Lucci right there. Like no, not permanently, but like he beats him down and then they get on their little thing and leave. And Luffy's just like, oh, I'm tired now. No injuries. He sustained pretty much no injuries in that fight. And Lucci's over there getting bodied. And Lucci, it's so funny because Lucci was talking all the smack like, oh, you're not the only one who's getting a power up. Like, we've gotten stronger too. And then Luffy just is not even a challenge. Although, with Kizaru on his way, that's going to be a challenge. I'm curious to see how that fight goes. If they decide to fight. I think they will, but I don't know how much Kizaru can be persuaded, but at this point they're kind of trapped in Punk Records because of the little barrier that's having some issues momentarily that allows them to get in, like allows CP0 and the Seraphim to get inside, has some issues, but they're kind of trapped in there trying to find a way to get out. And then I love when the Sunny gets revealed and they're trying to destroy it because they're like, oh, well, that's why it wasn't docked at the shore. And Kaku goes up to it and Zoro's the one defending it. And it's instant beef with Kaku and Zoro because of Eni's lobby. And he's just like, oh, it's you. I love it. It's just instant on site. Like, I have problems with you. It's so funny. So Bonnie and Luffy are kind of splitting off from the main group because Bonnie's still trying to go after Vegapunk and Luffy's kind of going after her to calm her down. And then while all of that chaos is happening on Egghead, yes, we get the thing about Kid being on Elbaf or getting to Elbaf, but then we get Garp. Garp is gonna go fight Blackbeard to get Kobe back. As much faith as I have in Garp, because we all know like Garp is like this powerhouse. He is so strong. We haven't even seen a fraction of his strength. Even though he's not in his prime, he's still feared by many people and he still has a lot of power. And as much faith as I have, I'd be like, oh yeah, he could wipe out Blackbeard easily because, you know, Blackbeard can't steal any of his powers because he doesn't have a devil fruit. That should be like an easy fight for him. But I'm also scared just because when it comes to Blackbeard, there's so many just variables, unknown variables, and things can go so many different ways. And because of how the story is turning, Oda could throw a curveball at us where maybe Garp gets captured or imprisoned in whatever shadow world that Blackbeard has command of. He could trap Garp in there. I don't know. So it's like, on the one hand, I'm totally confident that Garp can do this, even though they're like, everybody's telling him not to. He's like, nah, I'm going, and I'm gonna get Kobe back, and Helmeppo was super happy about it. But they're like, no, it's an emperor, you can't go without permission. And Garp is pretty much just like, yeah, whatever, I'm gonna do what I want. And as much as I have faith in him, I'm scared. I am scared that something might happen, and because I think Blackbeard is still gonna be in the final part of One Piece. Like, I don't know if he's gonna be the final villain, but he's gonna be up there with Emu. Like, I think Emu's gonna be like the ultimate final villain of One Piece at this point, is what I'm thinking. But Blackbeard is gonna be up there. So, as much as I would love to just be like, oh yeah, Garp's gonna like off-screen him, like, just gonna take care of him behind the scenes, like, story-wise, that doesn't make sense. So that's where I get my hesitations. It's like, okay, what's gonna happen when Garp does confront Blackbeard? What is Blackbeard gonna do? How is that gonna work in a story sense where it still makes sense, like, for Garp's character and for Garp's level of strength to go up against somebody like Blackbeard, who is physically a lot weaker than a lot of people that we've seen, because I guess his devil fruit makes him very vulnerable. So how does that track? How does that work? That's where I'm getting a little concerned, because Garp shouldn't have a problem with Blackbeard, but because of the story and how the story is moving, and the setup and the twists and turns, and how I think the final arc, final battles might end up, like, at least the players on that field, makes me a little curious to see how this is going to play out, unless it's like he gets Kobe and he just leaves and doesn't do anything more than that. Unless Blackbeard's trying to draw Garp out to do something to Garp to anger Luffy. But again, I don't know. I'm not sure how that one's going to play out. So I'm a little curious and a little nervous to see where that goes. Back on Egghead, they're all trying to figure out, like, okay, we need to go down and fight, we need to be able to get Vegapunk, we need to get to the ship, we need to be able to leave. They're trying to put all of these plans in motion, while CP0 is wanting to destroy Vegapunk and destroy his lab at this point before he can leave the island. And another twist, Stussy is on our side. This undercover CP0 agent that turns on them at Egghead because Vegapunk called in a favor and was like, hey, we have one more ally, can you help? And she does. And the original Stussy is like someone that, who was it? Because it shocked me when I found out. Who was the original? Yeah, Weevil's mother, this scientist who was in Mads, along with everybody else who claims to be Whitebeard's, like, wife, lover situation. I don't know. But she was the original Stussy, and this other Stussy was... I'm telling you, my brain hurts. It hurts going through all of these chapters. Like, it's one thing after another. I thought this Weevil guy was so irrelevant now, and he's been brought back into the story, and I'm like, I completely forgot that he existed. I completely forgot about him. And now he's back, and he was captured by who? Yeah, he was captured by Admiral Rokugyu and taken away. She wants Marco to go after him and get him back. But it's like, that was the original Stussy, and then the Stussy that's on our side, and a Mads clone experiment successful subject number 1. And she's like a vampire succubus type devil fruit person. I don't know. But she, like, bites Kaku and Lucci and makes them pass out. Just a little chomp and they're done. They get control over the Seraphim back just in time, and Sanji ends up saving one of the Vegapunks. I think it's Edison. Saves him right before the Seraphim strikes him and cuts him down. Sanji saves him because of the airwalk that he uses. But the Stella is missing and nowhere to be found at this point, and that's something that's holding them all back. And then we get Kizaru talking to one of the 5 elders, whose name is Saint J. Garcia Saturn. This plays into my theory so much about the whole aspect of different sorts of gods in the One Piece world. I mean, he's a 5 elder for a reason. He's at the top for a reason, but I was not expecting that name. It makes me so curious. And he's with Kizaru as they're on their way to Egghead. But Sentomaru stays strong even after his beating from Lucci and orders all of the pacifista Kumas that are on Egghead to protect and fight back. And I love this so much. After he unleashes all of them, he says, make sure your creator gets off this island alive. I love that so much. And then we get back to them looking for Bonnie. Luffy's exhausted. It's so funny. We get a good chunk of humor in this section really quickly with this panel of I think it's Shaka saying, oh well, you can see Bonnie on the monitor, and Luffy's like, mention that, please mention that. The Stella is lost, and then their control over the front of the dome has been lost, so those are the 2 things holding them back from leaving the island at the moment. But we get more humor and them trying to send out search parties for the Stella. And they're all trying to leave, and Zoro's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll help too. And literally everybody stops and is like, who's gonna find you? Sanji putting him in a headlock to stop him, and then like yelling at him, be like, now who's gonna come find you? No, like, we don't have time for this. You stay here. It's so funny. So him and Luffy just end up by themselves, and that's when we get that little glimpse of Kuma's flashback when Vegapunk describes what the pawpaw thing is and Bonnie enters it. It's too much for her at first and she has to leave, and it's so intense. Just the few panels that we get on it is so intense that she's bracing herself to fully immerse herself in it. And that's when Edison, who is looking for the Stella, looks like he gets blown up or some sort of explosion happens where he is. And that's when we cut to Morgan's, who's trying to frame this story to make it sound really fun, and that's when we get the entire Vivi reveal. It made me feel like a fool. It's fine. That's where I had to stop, because there was already so much happening, and my brain was hurting, and I, again, like I said at the beginning, I stared at that picture of Vivi with Morgan's for like 4 minutes, and was just shocked and dumbfounded that she was with him, that he had hid her and Wapol together. I don't know why them 2 specifically. I mean, I'm glad he's got Vivi, but why Wapol? I don't know, but Vivi's safe. So there's that. But that's my review of this section. It is crazy, it is wild, there is so much happening, and there's a lot of things moving in the background. I have a feeling we're about to get a fight with Kizaru and possibly Saturn, which is going to be interesting. We're about to get Kuma's backstory, which is going to be heartbreaking. I can already tell if that little tidbit didn't give me enough of a hint. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I hope y'all liked this review. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't watched my video on the fights that I've done covering the specific fights from Wano, I've done Robin versus Maria, which I just did on Tuesday. I've done Zoro versus King and Sanji versus Queen. If you want to check out those fights in detail, please go look at those videos. I had a lot of fun doing them. I did a Joy Boy video last week, and next week I is still undecided what I'm going to do. So wait and see. We'll figure it out together. It'll be fun. But again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one, scholars. Bye!